Here now, our present. The invention of the internet, that was almost 30 years ago. The fall of the Western Roman Empire, that's 50 times further back in time. In fact, these Romans are closer to us than the Great Pyramid's construction was to them. These monuments are 3 times nearer to our time than the Lascaux cave paintings. As for the mastery of fire by early humans, it's 30 times further back in time. These initial flames are 150 times nearer to us compared to when the dinosaurs went extinct. In summary, by focusing too heavily on timelines, we lose sight of the main point. How can we make the immense durations that separate us from events in distant pasts more tangible and understandable? The solution may lie in an ingenious calendar in which all the time that has elapsed since the world began would be compressed, until it fits into just one of our years, which would contain the condensed 13. In this scaled-down timeline, each month represents around 15 billion years of the universe's 8 billion-year history. Each day, 37,8 million years, an hour, a comma, 6 million years, a minute, 26 millennia, and each second, 438 years. This calendar puts monstrous time lengths into perspective. Our present is there on the evening of December 31st. The universe began at the start of the year, just after the Big Bang. Space, time, matter, and energy all begin on January 1st at midnight during the first 15 minutes of the year. The universe is so dense that light can't even circulate. And when it finally can, it illuminates before finding itself in a few seconds, in the absence of stars plunged into total darkness for 3 days, until finally these last ones light up and bring the universe out of darkness. Then there is no galaxy. About 10 days are needed to form the very first ones, which are billions. Yet the one we are in does not exist yet. We have to wait until mid-March to finally see our Milky Way form. It then looks nothing like the one we know today. It's a quasar. At that time, the supermassive black hole it hosted at its center was very active. It will remain so for a few hours at most before becoming more discrete until it becomes almost silent. And we still have to wait 2 months to see, in mid-May, our galaxy with its spiral shape. Among the hundreds of billions of stars that already make it up, none is our sun. It does not exist yet. Monstrous lengths of time will pass, 3.5 months on the scale of the calendar, during which our galaxy incorporates smaller ones. Stars are born, live, and die within it, exploding and ejecting matter. Nebulas tear apart as interstellar gas clouds collapse, and one of them begins to form our solar system. It takes about 5 minutes for the contracting matter at the center of the system to become hot enough for a star to ignite there. It's August 31st, and in the second spiral arm of one galaxy among many, an ordinary and exceptional star, because it's ours, has just lit up. And in just a few hours, the cloud of gas and dust begins to take the shape of a disk. 2 additional days are necessary for the matter within it to aggregate and eventually form planets cleaning their orbits. Among them is ours. Let's pause on this idea. When the Earth appears, 2/3 of the universe's age have already passed. Our world that has just been born is not a blue planet, but red, entirely covered by a single ocean of magma. The moon will not appear until the evening of September 3rd, forming in under a second. From the rocks sent into orbit following the collision between the primitive Earth and a protoplanet the size of Mars. After the impact, it will take 3 days for the surface to cool enough for water to remain there in its entirety. The Earth is then the scene of permanent eruptions, and gigantic storms continuously crisscross the globe when the 13th of September begins an intensive bombardment. The late bombardment. It will last 200 million years, which is a short week on the scale of the calendar. And it brings with it large amounts of water embedded in meteorites. And it's somewhere around there, in this immense black oscillating pressure cooker, around September 20th, that life appears, in the form of unicellular organisms. 3 weeks later, the activity of some primitive life forms begins to release. Large amounts of oxygen, which when combined with the iron dissolved in the oceans, cause it to precipitate. And over the next 2 weeks, the seas probably went from a light green color, characteristic of an environment rich in iron and reducing, to orange. As for the beaches, they may have had a rusty appearance. And somewhere around there, by the end of October, some microorganisms invent one of the coolest things of all time: sex. The atmosphere begins to fill with oxygen, but everything still happens underwater or under ice. Then begins a super ice age that transforms our world into a snowball. Our planet will remain frozen on its surface for 2 weeks, the time it takes to make 2 complete orbits around the center of the Milky Way. Because since its formation, our planet, tethered to its sun, travels through space, making a complete orbit each week on the calendar. Then, during the 4 weeks or 4 galaxy tours that follow, all sorts of bacteria appear in the water, cells with nuclei, the first plants and even animals. It's December 12th, our blue planet is white again. It's the cryogenian. In a few minutes, the average global temperature drops by 50 degrees and ice covers almost the entire planet again for 3 days. It's probably intense volcanism that got us out of this snowy mess in a few minutes. Everything that is alive is still desperately small, discrete and soft. Until December 16th, it's the Cambrian explosion. The tree of life finally takes off in the space of about 10 hours. All existing body models to this day appear. We start to find their shellfish, starfish, sea urchins, corals, sponges. Imagine any animal, whether it's an oyster or you. The origin of its architecture likely dates back to December 16th. On the 17th, arthropods appear, followed by fish, the first vertebrates, on the 18th. For nearly 4 months, everything has been submerged. No life exists on land. Until December 19th, when the first plants, mosses and algae begin to colonize the lands. They will take 2 days to conquer all continents. Green now keeps company with the blue of the oceans. Insects appear on the 21st, amphibians on the 22nd, and reptiles and the first trees on the 23rd. On the afternoon of the 24th, one of Earth's greatest volcanic eruptions begins, covering an area as large as Australia, nearly 2 kilometers thick with lava. It is responsible for the extinction of 95% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial species. The eruption lasted 10 minutes, but the Earth will take half a day to rebuild complex ecosystems and 2.5 days to fully recover. Dinosaurs appear on Christmas Day. Mammals arrive the following day. 10 days have passed since the Cambrian explosion. Continents have fractured, regrouped, dislocated, mountains have been raised, then planed. On December 26th, India starts moving back north. It will take 3 days to cross the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, birds appear on the 27th and the first flowering plants emerge on the 28th, quickly followed by pollinating insects. Dinosaurs dominated the world until the early morning of the 30th. When an asteroid about 10 kilometers wide puts an end to an unchallenged reign that lasted 4.5 days. After being red, blue and white, here is our planet turned grey. On the scale of the calendar, the dust raised by the impact will dissipate in 1/10 of a second. Within a few hours, mammals rush to occupy the ecological niches left vacant by the disaster. And here we are on the last day of the year. It's noon when the first cetaceans appear. The ancestors of all the great apes, which we are part of, arrive shortly after 2 o'clock. At 7 post-meridium, 5 hours later, the Strait of Gibraltar closes because of tectonic plate movement. Cut off from the water supply of the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean Sea will evaporate. A few seconds on the calendar. The blood's in lieu of a deep salt desert, reaching depths of 2,544 yards in some areas. It remains for 30 minutes before the strait reopens at 7:30, and the overall level of all the oceans on the planet drops by nearly 6 meters to fill the Mediterranean Sea in 1/10 of a second. 2 hours later, the Australopithecus appear. They are closely followed by Homo habilis, then Homo erectus. When 2345 at 2354. Our ancestors venture out of Africa, and over the course of the next 4 minutes, they will gradually colonize the entire world. At 2358, he creates the first sculptures and paintings. It's 11:59 post-meridian, of 20 seconds when Sapiens leaves his traces in the Lascaux cave, of 30 seconds when he invents agriculture, and of 47 when he melts metals and develops writing. Thus begin the last 13 seconds, which include the essence of what man calls history. The first great civilizations emerge in Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley and Egypt. 2 seconds later, the Great Pyramids are erected. And, in the space of 3 ticks of the second hand, we master the metallurgy of bronze, then iron. Alphabets appear, and cities such as Athens or Rome are built. The needle shifts another 2 notches. It's the birth of democracy in Greece and Christianity in Paris. The Roman Empire is then at its peak. Moments later, it falls. Empires rise and fall. It's the Middle Ages, the Hundred Years' War, the fall of Constantinople, the Ming Dynasty, and the Renaissance begins. Christopher Columbus rediscovers America, and we start the last second, in which all the modern era fits. The great discoveries, the political, scientific, and industrial revolutions, the two world wars. And then, during the last fifth of a second of our calendar, we have built metal objects that fly, changed the climate of our world, walked on others, and invented the internet. So many objects that 438 years ago, multiple kings would have raised armies to possess them. Let's pause on this idea. All our history fits into the last little quarter of an hour of the last hour of the last day of the last month of this calendar. Here, all civilizations were born. Religions, hopeful children, illustrious unknowns, superstars, all those who made history and correlated. To know on which side of the river the border is located. Everything that has been said, written, read, sculpted, painted, or invented was done there. During this brief span of time where the duration of a long human life is reduced to that of the order of a blink of an eye. Except that sapiens, us, the so-called modern women and men, are also, like all living beings today, descendants of a long lineage whose history began to be written around a 20 September. And since, for 2/3 of the existence of our universe, our planet did not exist, we could also have fun going back the course of this great history, that of the cosmos, of life, and of our origins. To try to discover how a little bit of this something ended up contributing to form one day. Placed on a blue ball, humans near a fire, a book, or the internet, starting to wonder, how did all this happen?
What do you think was there before us?
This world has always existed. It's been there since the dawn of time, because there was no day before.
If this video had been in the calendar, it would have lasted close to 260,000 of our years.
From one perspective, it took 13.8 billion years to create. To help us produce more content of this type, we need your support on Typee or Utip.